Stories emerging from Craigslist occupy a unique space between urban legend and documented reality, largely because the platform itself is built on anonymity, direct peer-to-peer contact, and minimal mediation. This combination creates an environment where ordinary interactions, buying furniture, finding housing, meeting strangers, can take unpredictable and sometimes deeply unsettling turns. When examining three of the most widely discussed, scary Craigslist stories, it becomes clear that their impact comes not only from what happened, but from how easily they could have happened to almost anyone. One of the most disturbing and well-documented cases is that of Philip Markoff, often referred to as the Craigslist killer. In 2009, Markoff, a medical student with no prior violent criminal record, used Craigslist to arrange meetings with women offering massage or escort services. Under the guise of a client, he gained access to victims in private hotel rooms, where he robbed and, in at least one confirmed case, murdered. What makes this case particularly chilling is the duality of Markoff's life. He was engaged, academically successful, and outwardly stable, which contradicts the common assumption that violent offenders are easily identifiable. This dissonance forces a deeper psychological analysis, the ability of individuals to compartmentalize their behavior and maintain a socially acceptable identity while engaging in predatory actions. From a structural perspective, Craigslist facilitated these crimes not by intent, but by design. The platform allowed direct communication without robust identity verification, meaning users had little way of confirming who they were meeting. The victims, operating in an already vulnerable context, faced compounded risks due to the private nature of their work. Yet it is important to recognize that the danger did not stem solely from the platform, but from the intersection of anonymity and trust. Markoff exploited a system where both parties relied on assumptions of legitimacy, of safety, of mutual understanding that could not be verified. The case ultimately led to increased scrutiny of online classifieds and raised broader questions about how digital platforms balance accessibility with user safety. A second case, equally unsettling but different in nature, is the Craigslist nanny incident involving Savitri Dutt. In 2013, Dutt posted an advertisement seeking a nanny, presenting herself as a legitimate employer. When a woman responded to the ad, she was lured to a residence under false pretenses. There, Dutt attacked her in an attempt to cut a fetus from her womb, driven by a fabricated pregnancy narrative she had constructed to deceive those around her. The victim survived, but the case stands as one of the most shocking examples of how online interactions can escalate into extreme violence. What distinguishes this story is the level of premeditation and the psychological complexity involved. Dutt maintained a false identity over an extended period, convincing friends and family that she was pregnant. The Craigslist advertisement was not a spontaneous act, but a calculated step in a larger plan. This introduces the concept of narrative construction as a precursor to crime. The perpetrator did not simply exploit an opportunity. She created a scenario in which her actions would appear consistent with her fabricated reality. From an analytical standpoint, this case highlights how digital platforms can be used as tools within broader psychological frameworks, enabling individuals to bridge the gap between internal delusion and external action. The third case, often discussed in online forums and sometimes blending into urban legend territory, involves a series of encounters commonly referred to as Craigslist roommate horror stories. While many individual accounts vary in detail, one particularly notable example involves a man who responded to a housing listing and moved in with a seemingly normal roommate, only to discover increasingly disturbing behavior over time. Reports describe hidden cameras, locked rooms, and signs that the roommate was monitoring or manipulating the living environment. In some versions of the story, the situation escalates to threats or physical danger, forcing the victim to flee. Unlike the previous two cases, which involve clearly identified perpetrators and documented crimes, these roommate stories often exist in a gray area between verified incidents and anecdotal reports. However, their psychological impact is no less significant. They tap into a fundamental fear, the invasion of personal space by someone who initially appears trustworthy. The process of finding a roommate inherently involves a leap of faith, particularly when facilitated by an online platform where background checks and references may be limited or fabricated. Once cohabitation begins, the power dynamics shift. The victim is no longer meeting a stranger in a public place, but sharing a private environment where escape may be more complicated. From a broader analytical perspective, these stories reveal recurring themes that extend beyond Craigslist itself. One key theme is the concept of asymmetrical information. In each case, one party possesses significantly more knowledge or intent than the other. Markov knew he was planning a crime, while his victims believed they were engaging in a routine transaction. Dutt constructed an elaborate deception that her victim had no reason to question. In roommate scenarios, the person offering housing may control access to critical information about the living situation. This imbalance creates vulnerability, as the less informed party must rely on assumptions that can be exploited. Another important factor is the role of context in shaping perceived risk. Meeting someone through Craigslist to buy a piece of furniture may feel low risk because it resembles a common, mundane activity. However, the same platform can facilitate interactions that carry significantly higher stakes, such as private meetings or long-term living arrangements. The danger arises when users apply the same level of trust across different contexts without adjusting for the increased risk. There is also a sociological dimension to consider. Craigslist emerged as a decentralized alternative to traditional marketplaces, emphasizing accessibility and community-driven interaction. While this model offers significant benefits, it also reduces the presence of institutional safeguards. Unlike platforms with extensive verification systems, Craigslist historically relied on user discretion, which can vary widely. This places a greater burden on individuals to assess risk, often without the tools or experience to do so effectively. Over time, many of these stories have contributed to a kind of cultural mythology surrounding Craigslist. The platform has become synonymous in some circles with strange or dangerous encounters, even though the vast majority of transactions are harmless. This perception is shaped by the way stories are shared and amplified. Incidents are more likely to be discussed, remembered, and retold, creating a skewed representation of reality. However, this does not diminish their importance. Instead, it highlights how rare events can influence collective behavior and awareness. Ultimately, analyzing these three stories reveals that the true source of fear lies not just in the events themselves, but in their plausibility. Each scenario begins with an ordinary action, responding to an advertisement, meeting a potential employer, searching for housing, and evolves into something deeply unsettling. This progression underscores a central tension of modern digital life: the need to trust strangers in order to participate in everyday activities, balanced against the awareness that such trust can be misplaced. The stories endure because they expose the fragile boundary between normalcy and danger, a boundary that is often thinner than people expect.